Morning, Unity Spiritual Center, Westlake. We are here to be that superhero for our community. And as you can see, I've got my superhero clothing and mask on because everybody knows a superhero needs a good mask and cape. I actually borrowed these from my granddaughter, Zoe, this week. And I know that there are kids out there watching because today is Multi-Generational Sunday. And so Zoe, at 4, almost 5, knows all about being a superhero. And she claims her superhero powers when she puts on her mask and this cape. She might turn invisible, or she might be able to fly. Whatever it is in that moment that she needs as a superhero, this cape and mask gives her that power. That is the power of imagination in our children to find their superpowers. So for those children that are out there watching today, I am inviting you to discern right now, decide right now, what is the superpower you are claiming for today? And then I'd love it if you would take the time while you're listening today to draw a picture of you as that superhero, or maybe write a poem or a story about what it is to be a superhero. And then perhaps your parents or the adult in your life could send those on to me so that I can share them with our community today. So Rev Joanne at unityspiritualcenter.com is that email address. I'll remind you later. I am a superhero for my community. Last week when I began this series, I said that superheroes typically have a supernatural power that gives them that superhero status. My presumption here, what I'm putting forth here, is that each and every one of us is already a superhero. But that what we really need to do is to take off our capes and to take off our masks and to show up as our authentic selves, as that divine Christ light that we are. And in that way, we will become that superhero from our community. As each of us becomes that unique and individualized expression of God that we are, we show up in our superpower. Perhaps, like me last Sunday evening, you found yourself tuning in to a superhero movie because we all had the opportunity to watch Black Panther, commercial-free, and I was there watching. It gave me the opportunity to learn a little bit more about that comic character, the superhero of the Black Panther. It turns out that the Marvel Comics started the Black Panther way back in 1966. Can you imagine, back in 1966, being a black boy or girl and for the first time in your life seeing a comic with a superhero that looked like you? That was part of the magic of the Black Panther. And of course, all of these years later, we now have this big screen Black Panther coming out through Marvel. And it is no less important to the black boys and girls that are a part of our world because you see, the movie The Black Panther was the first one in which an almost all-black cast universally appealed to the world. In other words, there have been movies with almost an all-black cast, but they have been designed specifically for a black audience. But this movie, The Black Panther, with an all-black cast, was designed for all of us. It didn't matter what color you are or where you came from. It universally appealed to us. And for those children today that got to see a black character as a superhero, it was no less amazing than for those children back in 1966. During this past week, I've done some looking into Chadwick Boseman because what I heard was that Chadwick Boseman was a superhero in his own right, not only because he was the Black Panther. I had an opportunity to go listen to his address, his commencement address that he delivered in 2018 to Howard University, which is the university he graduated from back in 2010. And in this address, he spoke about his conflict when he received his first role as an actor. And that role was for a soap opera. And in that soap opera, he was a black character. a black character who was lost, a black character who was violent, a black character who was being drawn into the gangs. And he was conflicted because it felt like the producers of this soap opera were taking a really stereotypical idea of a black character and inserting it into this soap opera. So after he had filmed for 2 days, the executives called them into their office and they said, "Chadwick, you're doing such a great job. We want you here for years to come. So anything that you need, let us know." So Chadwick took the opportunity to say, "Actually, I have some questions for you because I'd really like to understand my character. Can you tell me why my character has no father in his life?" To which the executives responded, "Well, of course, your father left when you were young." Okay. The second question was, "Can you explain to me why myself and my younger brother in this character, why they were sent off to foster care?" And the executives again said, "Well, of course, because your mother was on heroin." And Chadwick says, "I'm asking these questions because I'm not sure of that, of course. Don't you think this seems a little stereotypical?" One of the executives kind of shuffled through his papers and pulled out his resume, Chadwick's resume, and said, "Oh, I see you went to Howard University." To which Chadwick responded, "Yes." He said, "I'll be watching for you. And meanwhile, maybe we'll put you in connection with our writers so that you can share some of your ideas with them." Well, Chadwick was very excited because he thought if he could have this conversation with the writers, they could move beyond this stereotypical view of what a black man would be in this soap opera to a place of finding his inner talent or a character quality that was positive so that that could begin to come out so that this black character wouldn't be stuck in this role of victimhood. Chadwick was really trying to find a way to express this role without falling into that victimhood status. After filming the 3rd day, in what he thought was his best performance yet, because now he had unloaded from his chest those questions that he had been holding, he was fired. He heard from his agent that the executives had decided to go into a whole other direction. Well, much like Louis Zamperini, the superhero that I shared about last week, Chadwick has a deep connection to that divine spirit within him, his God. That communion with God, that when Chadwick was asked, "How do you determine which characters you want to play?" his response was with a laugh, "Prayer. It's not me." So here is that communion with God that both Louis Zamperini and Chadwick had. And so when he was fired from this role, he stood firm in his faith that somehow, some way, God was going to use this. And that maybe those executives would hear what he said and change that role so that the next black actor that stood into that role would have the ability to express something other than that stereotype. But at the same time, Chadwick felt himself being bitter about being let go. He also recalled in this address how he had met Muhammad Ali in the courtyard one day while he was attending Howard University. Muhammad Ali, who was elderly and shaking, and yet they had kind of combated with one another there in the moment of that courtyard, kind of exchanging little jabs like that. It was the high point of being there at Howard University to have met, this mentor in Muhammad Ali. And so as he was sitting with the bitterness of having been let go, knowing at the same time that God would use this opportunity somehow, some way, he suddenly had this thought, this vision of Muhammad Ali there in that moment, bumping him like that. And he thought to himself, I think in that moment, Muhammad Ali gave me the strength of a fighter. And he rose up in his power. I'm not sure, but I think that example of what Chadwick Boseman went through early on in his career likely impacted him for the rest of his acting career. Because the roles that Chadwick Boseman was most known for were roles of hope for the black people that he represented. He went on to portray Jackie Robinson, Thurgood Marshall, James Brown. But he rose to superstardom when he stepped in the role of that Black Panther, the king. And he, in that role, had the ability to inspire a whole generation of children. And he did. What none of us knew, what didn't come out until just last month, that during all of this time that Chadwick Boseman was that superhero, he was also, for the past 4 years, battling colon cancer silently. The producers and the executives that put together Black Panther never knew that he had cancer. In fact, they were very surprised because of the strength and the physicality that role required, that he played into even as he was going through chemotherapy. But he didn't just do that. During these years that he was going silently through this colon cancer, he was also visiting children in cancer hospitals, inspiring them through his role of the Black Panther. He impacted many of those children. Many of those children impacted him. He spoke about it at the premiere of Black Panther. His was a giving heart. His was a heart of courage and a heart of love and a heart of understanding that each and every one of us has a purpose in this world, and we are here to live that purpose. He shared that in the Georgetown Address. He let that graduating class know that they should not be inspired by money. That money isn't the be-all and end-all. He said to them, find your purpose. God has a purpose for each and every one of us, and if you live into that purpose, that's what you are here to be. We are the ones that we've been waiting for. Here are words of a superhero. And so it is to Chadwick Boseman that I am speaking to you today, to understand that to be a superhero doesn't mean that we have to have some supernatural quality. What we need to do is know that we are one with God, and then to connect with one another through that understanding. The power of connection is the superpower that we are talking about today. The power of connection is so important for each of us as a human being. Studies have proven this. From a research paper that I found this week called The Connection Prescription, using the power of social interaction. The definition of connection here is coming from Edward Hallowell, MD, in a book that he published back in 1999. And he says there are many examples of connection. A 5-minute conversation can make all the difference in the world if parties participate actively. To make it work, you have to set aside what you're doing. Put down the memo that you're reading. Disengage from your laptop. Abandon your daydream. Bring your attention to bear on the person that you are with. And that other person will feel the energy and respond in kind naturally. Setting aside, being fully present, fully engaged, fully with another person is the power of connection. Researchers have found the health benefit of that connection. In the same paper, it talks about the health benefits of social connection spanning from enhanced mood to lower blood pressure and results in decreased mortality. Daniel Nahmad just sang about that, right? I've added years to my life because I've allowed myself to forgive, because I've allowed myself to move to a deeper connection with those with whom I share this world. In fact, these researchers found close social ties to be a protective factor with regard to health. People who had unhealthy habits such as smoking, obesity, and physical inactivity but embraced close social ties lived longer than those who had more health-promoting habits but lacked these important social connections. So connection is so important. But the type of connection is what's really important. And in our world today, we have connections that are divisive and polarizing. In our world today, we have connections that are based on politicalization of everything. When I read about Chadwick Boseman and his superhero qualities, I read over and over again that he was for justice, racial justice, equity justice, health justice, religious justice, education justice. These things that should not be politicized, but unfortunately have and cause us to divide within our society as we are polarized with one another. So how do we make those healthy connections at a time when we're all encouraged to be physically distanced? At a time where it may be difficult to come together with groups of people and connect? I want to go back to that idea that I shared about what social connection is. To be fully present with one another, to set aside our thoughts, to really listen and understand, and how a 5-minute conversation like that can be a healthy connection that can support us in living healthy, connected lives. We can have those phone conversations. We can get on Zoom and have those conversations. My 10 a.m. Zoom group that meets Monday through Friday knows exactly what I mean, because we have made ourselves vulnerable. We have pulled off our masks and our capes, and we have spoken honestly, openly, engaging with one another with what's going on and how we are meeting the challenges in our lives. And in that connection, we become superheroes to one another. It's happening. We have opportunities to connect in this way. We can connect through social media. We can connect with family and friends, setting aside those political, divisive things that keep us spinning and not in peace. So I found on truthunity.net a couple of ideas that I wanted to share with you on healthy connections, on connecting beyond the stress that we are all feeling today. This was all written in a little booklet called Dealing with Stress Through Spiritual Methods by Winifred Wilkinson Hausman. And this is what Winifred says. Many times our problems with other people are the result of hurriedly reacting to what they have said or done. Think back just over this past week to the connections that you have made with people, no matter whether it's through the phone or in person or on social media. How many times did you or I react hurriedly to what they were saying? Instead of letting the strong feelings subside while we sift the sands of our own inner being, listening to the voice of Spirit within us until we can come up with the right answer. How much stress could be avoided by simply remembering that we do not have to react quickly or strongly to others? Much stress may be caused by our determination to change other people. How many conversations did you or I get in this week where our only intention was to change someone's mind rather than listening to what they had to share with us? Looking past the error does not mean that we condone the wrong, but it does imply that regardless of appearances, we know God lives in each and every person as the higher self, the divine activity that is always present, waiting to be called into expression. This is how we can be a superhero to our community, whether that community is the community of our family, the community of our spiritual community, the community of our greater community, the city we live in, or the state, or the country. It doesn't matter. Are we, you and I, willing to connect with one another in superhero ways? Listening with understanding ears, seeing with spirit-filled eyes, extending possibility into each moment, not getting caught up in the stereotypes that we have with one another, just as Chadwick Boseman was trying to point out with that soap opera. that he was a part of for that brief period of time. God, by whatever name, is wanting to use you and I in that spirit of connection to uplift and inspire one another. And we have the opportunity to do that each time we practice. And so, of course, we have a spiritual practice for today. This week, practice being in connection with one another. When you are feeling upset, consider how can you shift by forgiving the error and seeing the divine potential. Listen for the voice of God within you as you consider, what does love look like here? And let's practice that by being fully engaged with one another in whatever the moment brings up. And let us inspire one another through these practices. And so with that in mind, I did want to share with you a spiritual practice that was shared with me. And this is coming from Terry Brewer. So thank you, Terry, for sending this in. These are always my intention to inspire you to live into these practices, just as Terry did this week. So here's what Terry said. In last Sunday's spiritual practice, we were told to ask ourselves, how can I be the heart of love in this moment for my community? The concept of the heart of love, rather than the single word love, makes me think of the beating of a real heart and how it continues to serve the body moment by moment. I believe that coming from the heart of love means I must try with consistent effort and application to radiate love as I understand it. The very difficult challenge is that there's so much in this world right now that's not very lovable. Disagreement, anguish, division, and extreme polarization all over the place. It takes great effort and conscious self-discipline to send love from my heart consistently out to absolutely everyone. I fall down on that job all the time, but try to get back on it as soon as possible. I found an idea this week that gave me guidance. Strive to make your love greater than your need. I need and want for all of us to agree, to be kindred spirits, and to see from the same perspective. But we don't. So I try to send out love like God does. So everyone and everything in every moment that I can remember to do so. Thank you, Terry, for being that superhero to your community, to sending out love. I'm going to end with our scripture this morning, coming from the first book of John, chapter 4, verse 7. Beloved, let us love one another, for love is from God, and everyone who loves is born of God and knows God. Let us love and be that superhero for our community. God bless.